Welcome to the Ceres Masterclass with me, your co-host Stelios, and my good friend David Miller from Miller's in Haxby. In today's episode, we delve into the potato peeling process. Our goal with the Ceres Masterclass is to discuss, learn and teach each important aspect of running a successful fish and chip shop. The Ceres Masterclass is a tutorial series, but we will have periodical housekeeping and Q&A episodes to address listener questions and to provide updates. What we're really excited about, though, is also having professionals of each industry or topic that we're talking about to come on the podcast and give us more insight into their side of the industry. So listeners can feel free to message me or David or just leave comments on the Ceres podcast group. A little note on the wording masterclass. David and I see this more as a deep dive than us two being the be-all and end-all on every topic. So the name Masterclass refers to how much detail we are willing to go into on a topic. Some of the topics might seem mundane, and if you've been in the industry for a little while, you may also have learnt all of these topics the hard way. But like any business, we are on the business of learning. We'll cover essential training and development topics to help you enhance your business. The Ceres Masterclass isn't meant to replace training programs. Instead, it's here to complement them and to showcase their valuable work in the industry. It's a deep dive into the technical side of frying fish and chips from two industry insiders. David Miller has dedicated over 35 years to the fish and chip industry through his family-run business, Miller's Fish and Chips, in Haxby, near York. He has served as a board director and trainer at the NFFF Training Academy for over 7 years, focusing on training and enhancing industry standards. Miller's Fish and Chips has received numerous accolades, most notably being named UK's #1 independent takeaway at the Seafish National Fish and Chip Awards in 2018. His business is both MSC certified and Celiac UK accredited. I, on the other hand, came through the industry working in my family's fish and chip shops. Before founding Ceres in 2007, I'd worked for my father for 15 years. I help customers daily get the most out of Ceres products, but this also includes into tapping into my technical experience running fish and chip shops. So let's dive into today's masterclass about the peeling process. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you have any questions, get in touch.
Hi Stel, how are we today?
Not bad, mate, not bad. Excited to record today's episode.
Oh, that's nice.
So, in today's episode of the Ceres Masterclass, David, we are delving into the exciting topic of the peeling process. This is a deep dive into peeling potatoes. It is there to help our listeners prepare. It might sound mundane, but it's really basic in a fish and chip shop to get this right. In a fish and chip shop, in my opinion, most customers expect their potatoes to be completely peeled. It's not like a Five Guys or a bistro pub where customers don't mind skin on chips or fries. So in my opinion, this would be done and washed and polished. Again, it's a washed and polished potato. Essentially, it's not polished as such, but that rubbing action of those potatoes hitting each other essentially polishes it. So it is slightly different to like a pub or a restaurant that just might source a processed or frozen chip. In my opinion, David, I think you may agree here, it's very important to get the peeling process right, because from a fish and chip business point of view, it's good business to have a good yield, and it's good for repeat business to have a great chip, and that all starts in the peeling.
And like I always say, especially I think what's the biggest seller in a fish and chip shop? It's your chips. So I think a lot of effort needs to go into it.
David, run us through how a potato peeler is doing its job.
A potato peeler basically is a machine, and you could say it's like a vessel. It's got a hole in the top, and you drop the potatoes into this space, but it's also got a rotating plate on the bottom. that spins very fastly and actually moves the potatoes into a vortex. And it obviously pushes the potatoes onto the walls and bottom plate, and obviously the potatoes coming together as well. And the grit on the actual plates and the wall plates actually helps remove the skin by force off the potato.
But it's just brute force, isn't it, really?
Well, you wouldn't want to put your hand in there, that's for sure.
I've done it before. I saw a peeler recently, David, that was stainless steel, and the top was a thick perspex. And actually thought to myself, that was quite nifty because you get a good view of what's going on. And the water tube went through the perspex. And I thought that, for me, that made a lot of sense.
Shall I tell you where they were developed, Stel? Most of them are from America. Yeah, so if you look at any sort of American websites or catering websites, most of the peelers they've got there have an actual plastic top on.
For me, it just makes sense. I've got no skin in the game, but those black rubber ones, you just can't see. The black rubber lids, you just can't see what's inside, or even the stainless steel with the rubber seal, you can't see through it. So there are alternative methods in the industrial side of potato peeling. For example, rollers and steamers. Crisp factories, they've got like amazing peelers where they use the water, the natural water content in the potato they change the humidity and the water comes out and then the skin falls off. But again, those guys have got a lot of money and a lot of technology under their belts. But it is amazing how, hundreds of years, 160 years, they say fish and chips has been going, and we're still pretty much using the same technology as we were then.
Well, you go back to my granddad's day or my dad's day, it won't be far removed that they actually did it by hand. The method of rumbling has been the same, I would say, for about 30 years, at least 30, 40 years. There were big, heavy things then, absolutely cast iron things, where you probably couldn't service them like you can now. And now, obviously, we're more up to date, and we've got nice stainless steel machines with easy to change plates and walls in.
No, it's interesting, and obviously they're stainless steel, they're not cast iron, so that's a huge difference. I think for me it would be nice to see new technology, but if it works, it works. So as an experienced fish and chip shop owner, can you over or under peel?
In seconds. Yeah, you're talking seconds, I think. It's something that when you're peeling potatoes, you've got to really you've got to be set up for that. No distractions. That's what you're doing at that time in the shop, and you can overpeel and underpeel. Let's go to the overpeel bit. 5-10 seconds can cost you a lot of money. So it's something that you really need to think about. When are you peeling? Are you ready to just do that job? You can't be doing something else and trying to peel as well. You will be losing money.
One common misconception I've always found it's not even a common misconception, I've seen it happen actually. Like usually in the fish and chip shop, the person that is like, cash in pocket, a little backhander, it's a bit of a job for the old man or a job for the kid. It's the least important job, in terms of the operational hierarchy of a business. The peeling is actually one of the most important because you wouldn't just leave it. Well, we do. We just leave anybody to peel the spuds. They go outside on the phone if it's a young kid, or the old boy's reading the paper or doing something else. And that yield is just, you're losing yield. If someone's not on top of that job, you're actually losing yield, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So you cannot overstate how important that job is, and I think anyone who's doing that shouldn't be treated as though they're bottom of the pile. They're just as important as anybody of the team, but they're very, very important to the team. And especially, if you're trying to create profit within your business, to me, this is where it starts.
One chap that I know, and he paid his staff member, not hourly, but by the bag.
Really?
And he said, it's all about whether I'm quiet or busy, that person isn't... They're not rushing around. They're focusing on getting that product right. And he found that it was a bit more... Well, he's not in the business at all, but he just found that it was better for him. And I think that there is ways around it. You need to sort of instill into people that, it's not just first job, it's the chippy job. It's actually a really important job. And I think have some pride in peeling those potatoes. One question I'd like to ask you, David, what's your preference? Do you like to leave a bit of skin on?
Well, I would, years ago, rumbled them probably too much. And then you obviously start to become a bit more of a businessman in my journey of what I did. And then I realised that, I was taking too much off. And then I actually started to think about, as the trends came out about leaving skin on, and you talked about pubs with skin on and all that sort of thing. And they were really aimed at people sort of saying it's healthy for you. So I looked at it in our shop, me and Nick looked at our shop and thought, well, if we leave skin on, then we can actually use that as a bit of PR and say, you know, our chips are this, that, but we actually leave skin on, which has got vitamin C in it, your vitamins, and it's actually good for you. And to be honest with you, if you leave a bit of skin on, it just disappears, and it actually gives a little bit more colour and possibly a bit more taste. Again, you know, it's not for everybody, but that's what I found. But I always say to people, don't dismiss it. Have a go. If it's not for you, that's fine. This is what I keep saying about fish and chips. It is so great because there's so many different variations up and down the country, and this is why it's so ambiguous about what we talk about. This is a broad thing we're talking about, of just you and me with ideas and stuff that I've picked up and learned as I've gone along. And you're from a fish and chip shop family, Stel. I know you've got your business now that you do, but you've seen all this go, and I know when we were talking about it, my dad and your dad did something together like that I learnt, and you learnt off them as well, which is quite, you know, it's great.
One of the pros, I would say, if you did leave a bit of skin on, whether it was intentional or on accident, it's just reinforcing to customers that it's a real product that you're making on site with a completely natural product from the ground. So I think for me, it just reinforces that story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's no downsides there. For anyone listening to this, how do they sort of know whether the potatoes are ready to come out? When do you open the door?
Well, I think you've got to do your test, haven't you? That's the most important thing. You do a rumble test and you look at what they look like when they come out. Is that the look that you're looking for? And it all comes to looking at and dropping in. If you've got somebody working for you, dropping into that potato room and checking on it, or if it's just a sole operator, it's something you're looking at all the time, you know, and you one day can be very different to the next. And I think that's the thing about the fish and chip shop life, or the products we use. They're natural and they're changing all the time. So this is an ongoing thing that you need to look at all the time. So to me, it's about your eye, what you want in your shop, but also thinking at the back of your mind, how can I make as much money out of this product that is my bestseller in my shop?
Again, if you've got in mind that you're on top of it, you're not doing something else, you know, if you're doing the potatoes that day, try not to do 7 other things. Try not to do your curry sauce, cut your fish. Try not just say, well, because the fact is, if you're just doing that one job, you're going to get it done faster anyway.
Can I just say, Stel, it's little things like if you use 5 bags, get all the 5 bags opened, ready to go. Get all the tops of them in the bin, put away, ready. Your bags are all ready to go. You've got all your knives ready. You've got all your buckets ready. You've got all your barrels ready. You've got your bungs out the barrel. All these sort of things add to moving the production quicker.
No, it's true, and that is that the key word is you're sort of creating a production line, and you need to be ready. There's no point starting having your potatoes in the peeler and be like, damn it, where's my paring knife? Oh, where's my peeler? Oh, where's this? Where's that? Oh, I forgot to switch the radio on. I went to a shop in just outside of Doncaster once, and the chap was peeling his potatoes, and he couldn't hear me knocking at the door. I was meant to be there. And I just went back to the car, and he said, oh, you caught me while I was peeling potatoes. I never leave the peeler when I'm peeling potatoes. I just want to get them done as fast as I can, and it's totally understandable, because if you move away, you're losing yield, and it also slows down the job, doesn't it?
Is that because he hated the job and he couldn't stand doing them in the cold and getting his hands wet, or was he thinking about?
I think he just wanted to get the job done, like stop, because But no, it's a lovely job, David.
It's the worst job.
Stop it.
You
no,
know it
it's
is.
not. No, I didn't mind that. Like, that was not a job. My dad didn't let me do it that often, if I'm honest. My dad always thought that we shouldn't do that, but we did, and I did actually enjoy it sometimes. I probably enjoyed it when I didn't have to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I had to do it, then I'd probably not enjoy it as much. But again, it's a job that needs doing, and if you're going to do it, it needs to be done properly.
And you'll hear a bit later, you can't be late. You've got to be on time when if that's the time you start, you can't be late.
Yeah. No, exactly. You've got to work to the process. Personally, I'd probably peel to the point where I could see the white potato flesh, keep opening the lid. Sometimes my dad used to just do it without the lid. Every now and then he'd put the lid on just to press it down. But, and one of the tricks you alluded to earlier is what your dad taught you, what my dad taught us, which is have a barrel of water next to you and get your bucket, tip a couple of buckets of water, and if you feel like you're getting close, all you need is half a bucket of water to disperse the soil and mud, and you can actually see what stage your potatoes are at.
Yeah.
I wonder how people came around that sort of thinking, those little tricks of getting them ahead of the game, David.
I really don't know, because whenever I was a kid or whatever in the shop, we always had a reservoir of water. Always. We always used a bucket of water. And I think he used that as a timer almost. It was like 3 buckets of full water in and ready to come out sort of thing. And that's just...
And that's with the tap on.
So you've got you've also got your tap going into the rumbler, but then you've got another hose pipe going into a barrel, a large barrel that's obviously full before you start, and you've just got that constant reservoir of water just so you can flush off all that dirt very quickly.
I think for me the pattern's emerging already, like in this episode, is that you need a lot of water to get this job done. Like same as the growing side of it as well.
Yeah.
The washing side of it just needs lots of water. You know, I don't think you can go into a job like this by being not so much stingy, but too economical with water, because you do need it. You'd probably spend far too much time switching levers on and off if to try and conserve water.
In the grand scheme of things, still, it's not. It's pretty cheap out of all the utilities.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention, David, is what's your thoughts on the green on the potato? Just spend ages cutting it all off, or?
That's an interesting one. Sometimes it depends how bad it is. You can cut it off, but I think sometimes if they're really bad, there's a bitterness goes through them.
Yeah.
So would you put that to one side and get rid of it?
I did.
If it's just a slight bit on it, cut it. But if you really look at it carefully, sometimes you can actually see that green tinge going through. And to me, that isn't really what you should be using, because if that's the first chip that they're trying, it's slightly bitter, it just puts them off, I suppose, doesn't it?
I've always heard that the green bit is bad for people, and I read a story ages ago and they said it was the green bit was cyanide, but it's not.
No.
It can make you sick, but it's not cyanide. But basically it's chlorophyll when it's exposed to light, and chlorophyll's absolutely harmless.
Yeah.
But when this is exposed to light, it increases the levels of solanine.
Yeah.
And that's what's toxic. If animals eat anything with a high amount of solanine, it makes them sick.
Right.
So it is harmful for humans, and it can cause nausea and headaches. But again, you've got to eat a lot. A child has to eat 16 ounces to make them sick. So
that's a fair amount then, isn't it?
It is.
I see you looking at the notes, serious neurological issues. That's probably what's happened to me, probably.
You've eaten a lot of green potato. What's your thoughts on rumble times, David? Is it something that you're checking, or you're monitoring, or you're keeping a guide on this?
Yeah, I think you need to have it somewhere. If you're just a sole operator, then fine, it's in your head, you know what you're doing. But I think if you've got a team working for you, it's a good thing to have somewhere that this week's rumble time is, whatever that number is. But then I suppose your staff have to have that little bit of leeway to say, David, could you come and have a look at this? I think they need another 5 seconds, or I think I can get away with 5 seconds less. But I think the guide should be roughly what, when you rumble them, say, that's how I want my chips to be, and that's the rumble time. And you're pretty fine that if that's the rumble time you're after, to give you the standard you want, the potatoes, unless they're really bad condition or what, they average out usually around the same. But you have to have leeway to be able to go up and down a bit.
I'd set a timer for when you need to look. And I think that's probably better, because then that's the time that you need to open it and have a look. And then it alludes to what you said, which is 5 or 10 seconds off or 20 seconds off. You mentioned, well, it's all right if you're a sole trader, but how do you then train the next person? I think it gets you out of that mindset of always saying, oh, well, I do it all and I know better than everyone else. If you start setting a standard, then if you do take on somebody else, because hopefully the shop's busier and you can't do everything, it means that they are following a standard.
Yeah, and then you just drop in every now and again and say, how's it going? And just check that what you trained them to do is actually being done. And actually call in and just say, how's it going, sort of thing, rather than leaving them to it and reinforcing that, we need to get this right because it's a really important part of starting the fish and chip journey.
It puts a lot of value on that position, and I think then it just helped build this consistency, because if the person coming in respects that role, it can still be part-time and it can still be an older person or a younger person, but if they've got respect for that role, I think that really says a lot. And it all starts with the management. If you're asking questions, oh, how did you find these potatoes today? How did you find this? How did you find that? Oh, let's do a rumble test. I think these sort of questions really help people get their head around it.
Yeah, or we say, just call in. Can I help you? Do you need any help? Or is there anything you might not be sure of? And by the other token, praise them when they come out and everyone's going, these chips look good. You say to them the next day, those chips you chipped us yesterday were fantastic. Keep up the good work, thanks. Cost you nothing.
So true. And again, it's a hidden job. It's a job that not everyone's queuing up to do. So if you can build a little bit of passion behind it, as it deserves, then you're laughing. David, would you be keeping a log? We discussed potatoes in the last episode. Would you keep a log and say, these are Agria, bought them off this merchant, this was the price, this was the date, and this is what the peeling was like?
Yeah, absolutely. Then you get a sort of understanding of what's coming through your door, what you like to work with, but also, as again, going back to the farmers, you know, I might like farm B, you might like farm A, and if it's whatever farm works for you, and you go, well, I really like the stuff that comes from farm A, and I'll go, well, I like B, and you get a record of where they're coming from. You might go, well, I always know they're good from him, so that gives you a good understanding where they come from. But that diary is so important. Because you forget. I can't sometimes remember what I did on Sunday and what are we now, Wednesday. You know, so much happens within a working week. So how you can remember what you were on this time last year, unless you've got it written down in like a diary, it doesn't have to be, you know, War and Peace. It can be just a little notes on it. You've got an idea of how it is shorthand and you can read it and go, yeah, I've got that. And, okay, maybe you don't have to do it every day, but at least for every drop of potatoes you get, some sort of record of what it is. And then I also think it's probably good to put in a little bit, if you did have to change the rumble time. And why was that? You know, because if you've started off at so many minutes or so many seconds on the Monday, but for some reason you've changed it on the Thursday, why is that? And I think that's maybe a good thing to put down. And again, then you can relay that back to the merchant.
It goes back to what we said in the last episode. If you're relaying this information back to your merchant, they are going to start taking you seriously. They are going to come to you for advice. They're going to say, well, this person is checking, they're monitoring. Why would they not then send you good potatoes? You're only going to benefit from that arrangement.
So, Stel, how will you know if you've got stones in your potatoes or in your peeler?
So there's an old saying that says you only have to smell off milk once to know that it's off. And I think the same is sort of true with a stone in the peeler. If it's a significant stone, it's going to make a hell of a noise and vibration. It's not something that can go unnoticed. And if it's a little one, you can just sort of, you hear it ping around a little bit. But a loud one, it's pretty significant. You must have come across that over the years, David.
Very much so, you know. But I think it's getting rare now because of the technology that the farmers use when they're bringing the actual potatoes out of the earth off the field, and they riddle them and they've got the holes for that sort of thing to drop away. But one thing about it, if you do hear a stone, you need to get that off as quick as possible because actually that stone could shatter. Mm-hmm. And if it shatters, you could get maybe little bits actually embedded in the potato that you don't even know is there. So, you know, not every stone that comes out of the earth is rock solid. Some can be quite brittle and break off. You know, just be careful of that. But it is a natural product, remember, and you've just got to be aware of it.
It can also cause damage to your peeler as well, especially where the grit is. If it's going around at that force.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, if you're doing it every day and there's stones in it every day, it's going to have an effect.
Obviously, if you've got stones in your potatoes every day, you need to be having a word with your merchant. That is rare. It is rare.
Well, if I was a farmer still, I'd have at least 25k of stones and I'd be sticking them in over 10 bags.
I see a lot of posts on the groups where they say that the farmers must have a box of stones right at the end and they're putting one in each bag of potatoes. I think with you it'd be the other way around. I think you'd have a bag of potatoes and you'd drop one potato in a bag of stones.
No, going back, we're not taking the mick out the farmers. No, the technology is good and they try and produce the best product they can. But just remember, it is a natural product, and this is why we have a production like this, to make sure that we've got everything clean, due diligence for our customers, and everything's safe, because what you don't want is a stone in a chip. Somebody taking a bite of that, cracking a tooth, you've got problems.
Well, my dad used to do it two different ways. If it was a small stone, you could sort of tell by the sound. You'd basically open the door, and you put your hand there, and you'd hopefully try and aim it out. But really, just switch it off, find the stone, get it out, switch it back on. I don't think it's going to do your machine any favours starting it from full, but it's also better than having a stone knocking around and doing loads of damage anyway. So you take your pick when it comes to damage. I'd imagine switching it off is better.
Yeah, and I think if you can empty them out, I know it's a faff, but it's going to be a lot easier on your machine, on your machinery, because they don't like to be started from core with a lot of weight on. You're just putting a lot of tension on the bearings, plus the fixing that actually holds the plate on. Because what you don't want is them pins having too much pressure on and shearing off.
Talking about stones going around and losing some grit, you lose grit from obviously damage like stones and very dense potatoes, but also just the action of the potatoes going round. So how often would you re-grit your peeler, David?
It's like your range. It's like every bit of your chipper, every bit of equipment is extremely important. We need these, and they make us a lot of money. So you need to be looking at it a lot, and I think you've got to do it at once a year, without doubt. I think if you start going 2 years, you're not going to be getting a very good product, after 12 months, 14 months, 18 months, where if you do it every year, you're going to have a lot better product and you're going to have better yield. The way I was told to do it by an actual rumbling company was that you need to sort of think about the potatoes at what state they're in. So as the main crop comes out and they're in storage, the skins actually get a bit tougher. So really you want to be thinking about, so the end of the season sort of starts, it's sort of October, isn't it? September, October, right up to June. So we need to thinking around March time, maybe we need to get them relined or actually re-gritted. Now you can do this yourself, there are packs out there, or you can get them sent away. Again, I don't know which is the best. I always used to send mine away, and I had a spare set. So I had one working, one being reskinned. So I was sort of got it done March time, March, April. So it was, as you can imagine, if they're being re-gritted, they're super sharp, they are super aggressive. So it actually was working with the potatoes that had a little bit thicker skin on, but it had also cooled them down, sort of got them a bit smoother, taking that aggressive start off, and actually got them ready for the new potatoes coming in. So that it didn't take too much off, because obviously new potatoes are very, very thin. You can actually take it off with your fingernail.
You'd try and avoid at all costs re-gritting just before new potatoes, wouldn't you?
Oh yes, without a doubt.
Obviously if something happens and there's damages, then you've just got to swallow it for a little while, but for the most part you just want to avoid that. Like,
be aware when you have them re-gritted, they put a resin on. I would think it's something like epoxy resin to actually make it stick to it. There will be loose coming off that as well. So those first couple of bags that you do, be very vigilant about what's coming out. And I think that's a good reason why I used to have 2 sets. Was that it let the second set that you weren't using actually cure. So you can actually, if you do it one day and then you're doing it the next, you can actually be doing it too quick. It needs to set. It's like, when you paint anything, they always say you need to leave it so long to cure, even though it might look okay. How many people do decorating and get the skirting boards done and can't wait to get the carpets in and rip half the paint off because they've not let it cured? Exactly the same sort of thing.
I think that's a great idea, having a second top. I don't know what they're called.
Well, there are plates out there, so there's a bottom plate and your bottom walls. Again, when you're doing it, make sure you've got the right equipment, because so many people don't have the proper screwdrivers. They go in and try and take it out, and they smash the threads on the top up. Then they've got to get an actual company in to take them out. So just make sure that you've got the right gear to do it. If you haven't, if it's not your sort of thing, there's companies out there that will come and do it for you. Because I was always a great believer, if there's professionals out there that's going to do it, I'd rather they did it and know it's done right, sort of thing. Because if you're not very good at those sort of things, it can end up costing you a lot more.
Would you say it's false economy then to not re-grit it? Because if you've had a peeler now for 2, 3 years, 4 years, and you've never re-gritted it, that's going to be taking a lot longer to peel the potato, surely.
Well, of course it is. Yeah, it's your electric's not cheap these days. It's doubled, as we know, so that's going to cost you a lot more. And I don't think it's a lot. I wouldn't know the price of relining at the moment, Stel, but it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things. You can soon make that back in the yield and the time it's the amount of time it's been in there, and the larger it leaves that potato to make a bigger chip or more chips, it's going to pay it back.
It's worth noting as well that if you're having you've seen a lot of damaged potato with chunks taken out of them, that's also because there's not a lot of grit and the metal underneath is exposed.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're getting chippings coming off, that's never going to be good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you on this. How often would you maintain it? Did you ever get your peeler serviced or anything?
Well, usually, if I'm getting it relined and I'm getting a company to do it, there'd also be a service company, hopefully together, and they'd do the whole thing. Because I'll tell you what happened to me. I didn't get it done once, and I knew the plate wasn't sitting right, and I just kept going and going, and all of a sudden the pin shattered, and that was it. And I was in absolute... I had to wait to get a second one in, to borrow one off somebody, and it was just a disaster for 3 days.
Well, no, it's mental, isn't it, really? Because, again, if you haven't got, a peeler, you've got no business. So should you have, in that case, a spare peeler?
Well, it all depends how much money you've got. can you afford to have just one sat there just in case? I think this is if you start to use reputable people that maybe work with potato rumblers and actually sell them, they usually have spares and you can get in touch with them. But yes, if you've got the space, you could have, but again, it's extra money, isn't it? Having 2 chippers, and maybe you haven't used it for 2 years and you think, well, why is that sat there? I could sell that. And then, the law of averages, you do that, week later, you probably need that second chipper again. It's swings and roundabouts still. If you can, fantastic. I think the other way is to find out who you're dealing with. Do they have spare chippers? These sort of things.
For me, it's a multifaceted answer. If you have that service from somebody, is down the road and they're very reputable and they can drop you one off and fix yours in the meantime, that's great. Then you don't need to do anything. If you generally only have one peeler and then you have a critical failure, then in reality you have none.
But doesn't that come back to making sure you're on top of it all the time? So if you think, oh, that's making a funny noise, don't just keep saying that's a funny noise. Act on it straight away.
Especially if you have one, that's more reason. Another thing you could do is, let's say you've inherited this older peeler. Let's say you've bought the shop and it's got this half a bag, trying to think, crypto or whatever they're called back in the day, I can't remember now, and you want to get a new nice stainless steel one, a brand new one, then get the new one, start using it, send the older one away for refurbishment, get it re-gritted, get it all sorted, and then you've got it. Because even a new peeler, things go wrong. It's not going to work every time you switch it on. So I do think that's one option where if you are going to upgrade, don't sell your other one, keep it, and then use it.
And then if you think, right, that's it, I don't need it, get it sold. It's a multi answer.
I'd only ever sell it if I knew that I had a good engineer on my, in my vicinity.
There you go.
Another thing I'd do is I'd be looking at the groups all day long because there's some absolute bargain, and buy one when you don't need it, because then you're almost like, oh well, that's a good deal, I'll have that. And sometimes someone else's crap is your gold. You could really do well out of that. Yeah. That's my thought.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, would you have a half or a full bag peeler, David?
Full, without a doubt.
Couldn't get my words out.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's going to take you twice as long. We all want to be busy. You have to be. I think your shop has to be able to do a full bag. I think it's just going to cost you a lot more. And I think if you've got a half bag peeler, like you said, still keep it and get an upgrade. I really would.
Do we need to touch on any more about? I think we've touched on early crop. The fact is, early crop's going to take absolutely no time to peel. Again, you mentioned earlier, well, you sort of alluded to main crop would need 3 buckets of water. Yeah. I'd imagine early crop needing what? One?
Out.
Yeah. So you'd literally put them in. By the time you lean over to get your bucket of water and tip it in, I'd pretty much say by the time you drop that bucket, they're ready to go, aren't they?
Yeah.
That door's ready to open.
But just remember, Stel, that this is what that main crop changes throughout the year. So this is
it does. Yes,
you've got to be on it. You've got to keep looking. And as I say, what happens on a Monday could change on a Thursday.
I think it's highly likely that if you've had a delivery on a Monday and they're all from the same farm and they're not a mixed batch, you'd probably be all right until you get the next batch.
Yeah.
I think it's always good to remain vigilant, isn't it?
I'm just sort of overemphasising that, really, to sort of say they do change. So just because they're from the same farm and the same farmer, they could be from a different field or even from the same field from a different part of the field. And again, it's a natural product.
I wanted to ask you, I know you're from Yorkshire, so the answer might be 24.99, but what's an acceptable yield from 25 kilos of unprepared potatoes?
So from 25, I think industry standard is around 20 kilos. But that means, to me, every 5 bags, you've actually put 1 down the drain. So that's quite a lot, if you start thinking about it. So every 10 bags, that's 2 bags you put down the drain. Every 15, that's 3. Every 20, that's 4 bags. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Why would you do that? So I think if you can get 22, 23, happy days. So then every 8 or 9 bags, you're actually gaining a bag on the way you did it before. But then that comes down to what you want. Like, I like a bit of scun in it. You said you like them nice and clean. So there's a happy medium in that. It has to be about what you want your product to look like in your shop. But I think in today's world, these factors have to play a part in how you do it.
I think for me, the skin isn't so much an issue. What's worse for me is not being eyed properly, potatoes having eyes on them, or having any sprouting on them, or, you know, when they've got that sort of black star inside as well, where you chip them and, you know, you still serve it, although they've got that big crack going through them. For me, I think that's a lot less appealing.
Absolutely. So there's skin, and then there's as you say, eyes and the cracking. And this is when you might need a knife instead of a peeler. But again, that's probably where, if you have an iron tray, you can actually put them straight onto an iron tray. Like a lot of people just put them into barrels. But if you have an iron tray, you can actually see it better, and you can actually work through it better. But again, that to me, that comes down to when you're actually buying the potato. And if it's got too many eyes in for you, you need to be saying, what else? What other samples?
If they need a lot of work, then that's a lot of work. Simple, yeah.
The peeling is the easy bit. This next bit of making sure that they're all nice and clean and they've got no eyes and black bits and all these and cracks and everything can green on them. That's where the work is.
For me, where your iron table is, or essentially, which is basically, we say table, it's just a frame on top of the peeling bath. You'd have a little paring knife, a little peeler, a traditional peeler, maybe a wide peeler. Just have everything there, because you don't know, the quicker you can move, the better. Because again, if you've got to go running to find something, it's not very good. You want to have everything nearby, so you can quickly bosh, you know, peel, get rid of a gaper, get rid of a big black crack, get rid of this, and have a bucket nearby as well. And I always like having the bucket underneath, because you can just flick off the crap. Again, it's just, if you're working quite speedily, it just means that you just crack on with the job, and you've not made a 1 hour job a 1.5 hour job, because you've got a lot, you know, as we're going to discuss in these episodes, there's a lot more jobs that you need to do. So
I think as well, the one little thing I used to do is when the potatoes came out, I always used to give them a quick rinse. They just look better, and you can handle them better, if you get what I mean. I don't know what that is and what it does, but after they come out of the ramen, I used to give them another quick rinse, and it just seems to clean them a bit more.
Because otherwise they've got that little bit of the foaminess, the grittiness.
That's right.
The starchiness, where just a quick rinse, you can just handle them better, and off you go. Again, it alludes to, we're just using a lot of water here, and, you know, it might not sound responsible, but the fact is, you need it. If you're going to clean a dirty potato that's come out of a field, you need water. If people want to peel a little faster, again, it's that bucket technique, but I just think that, you know, the more water, the better. Hopefully you haven't got a water meter. How do you, David, get rid of all that, the crappy waste out of the you know, the back of the peeler? How are you getting rid of, you know, these potato peelings that we've just discussed?
In the old day, it just used to go down the drain, didn't it? We didn't used to bother. But obviously, it's changing big time. Legislation going forward, it's coming. I don't think it's fully legislated now, but I know a lot of places in London. I spoke to one of my potato merchants this week, and he said there's nothing actually written down as such yet. But there's a lot of people in sort of boroughs of London that are actually cracking down. So it's coming. You know, we've got to be thoughtful of what we're doing. So I always say, well, if it's coming, let's get into place now before it actually comes legislation, because guaranteed it's going to cost you a lot more money, and they're going to want a lot more different equipment in. Whereas if maybe you already had it in retrospect, you might be okay. It's businesses going forward. So really what you need is an inceptor. So basically it's like a basket that collects all the dirt, all the what we call cake. So that's the peelings, mud, bits of potato that's come off, and then it lets the water pass through it, so that all that is in just one place. And obviously that needs to be emptied as well. So again, you need to find out how you can get rid of that. Now, can that go to normal waste, or can it be used as garden to compost, or does it go in actual food waste? There's lots of things you can do with it, but it's actually finding out who will take it. That's the biggest problem you've got.
I'd imagine what most people have done with that is they've tipped the bucket or whatever, that interceptor tank, and whatever is in a bucket, they'd empty it into an old potato sack, they'd roll it up and put it in the back of a bin. And for the most part, that's probably still okay. It's low risk. And I'd probably carry on doing that until somebody from, you know, environmental health or the council tell you otherwise. And they will, because that's their job. And, you know, they'll come around with their white jacket and their clipboard and tell you you're doing it wrong.
Just think of it this way. If they can trace it back to you, which they can very easily now, because they can quite easily take samples of whatever's blocked it and dirt.
You mean what's going down the drain,
yes.
you mean, David?
And if they can actually trace it back to you, you could be looking at a big fine. And I've heard of fines of 10, 12, 15, and that could be your profit for 6 months, and that could have a VAT bill coming up or a tax bill or something else has gone wrong with the shop, and that could actually put you on a.
I think it would take a lot for that to happen, and hopefully people aren't putting solids down the drain. We're going to discuss a bit of that down the line. There was a potato chip processor, so a pre-pack processor in Tamworth, I read on the Government UK website, and they got fined £25,000 because based on a farm they just had a pipe going into like a stream, and all the starch and sugars, they found hundreds and hundreds of dead fish. And you think that's gonna, and I know that's a larger scale, sooner or later they're going to use these cases and come after smaller business because they'll have what they call proof. So yeah, for me, I'd be getting the solids out, putting them into a potato bag and putting them into normal waste. If they provide you with a green bin later on, when I say like a composting bin, then do that. But also, if you do have a fish and chip shop that is also your home, you could dig it up and put it in the garden and use it as fertiliser. That can be done too. Again, providing it's not been mixed with anything else.
You'd have big hills in your garden by the end of the year, though, wouldn't you?
Well, you probably would, to be fair. It wouldn't take long for that crap to, go all mulchy, though, would it? It's interesting because, again, the technology is quite behind. You talked about interceptor tanks. They will still need emptying every few bags. They do get filled up quite quickly, which sort of tells you how much goes down a drain for the most part.
Can I just say, Stel, but that comes to buying, doesn't it? So if you've got one that's filling up a lot more than what it did last week, you need to look at that. And going back to the diary we talked about, it's not a bad thing to actually add up all your waste on the week. And I'm not just saying the cake. What I mean is what you're taking off the potatoes, like the eyes, green, that sort of thing. And you could have quite a substantial amount by the end of the week. So again, if you can reduce that, it can only help you in business.
One thing I wanted to ask you, David, what's your thoughts on peeling and treating potatoes? Because I've got my opinion on this, but what's your thoughts on peeling and treating the potatoes and then washing them, eyeing them, treating, and then letting them dry and then chipping them as you go along?
At the end of the day, it's the potato you're working with. Is it oxidising? So if it's oxidising, you need to get that peeled, treated straight away. If it's not, then you might be able to do 2 barrels. But then you also have to remember that first barrel's got to be ready to go for whatever time you clean it. And there's a certain amount of time, which we'll discuss later. So I think it all comes to what your potato's like. Is it oxidising? Is it not? But if I was doing it myself personally, I think I would treat every barrel. So I'd do a barrel, get it treated, gone, and then I'd work on to the next one. So I'm like starting off bag, what does a barrel take, a normal barrel? Is it 3 bags? So you do 3 bags, chip it, rumble it, then start again. And I think that's the way to do it, unless you've got a massive production, you've got 2 people on it. So one can be rumbling and one can be eyeing and 2 can be chipping. And, it all depends what your process is. But I again think possibly 1 at a time is the best.
We're probably going to work on a potato diary because I think just something to give everyone a starting point. Give us some time. It'll be a free download. It should be available by the time this goes out. And again, it is just a starting point. It's not to do everything. You do what you want with it. But I think it's just good. I think me and David have spoken so much about that, so it just makes complete sense.
Well, it's just knowledge, isn't it? And you learn so much about keeping a diary. And it's just there as record, and I think it's very, very good to have your relationship with your wholesaler, because you can actually talk about something that you remembered was good last year, but you can't be ringing up going, them chips from somewhere near Lincoln, what was it called? But if you can actually say exactly where they're from, you're on it, aren't you? For me, it's a no-brainer. I just completely believe that, and hopefully one of the professionals can tell us this, they can reinforce this. If you're taking all this information and you're using it to your benefit and also sharing it with your potato farmer or potato supplier or merchant, they're not going to send you crap because they're going to say, this person remembers everything because they've got everything written down. And then, obviously, if we use it for the good, you're going to ring up and say, like David said, well, last year I was using this agria from this farm and I'd like them again if they're available. Or, on the same coin, the agri were brilliant last year, but they're not so good this year. What's happened? Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I always find really important, and it's since we've started developing cleaning products, it's made me consider how dirty a potato room is. You've got the fact that the dirty potatoes, as in from the ground,
not so much unhygienic, just full of mud, because that's the nature of the beast. And then you've got the fact that constant water just going everywhere. One of the things that people don't realise is that usually if you can smell mould, that's listeria. So
That's bad.
what are your tips for keeping a potato room clean?
Well, again, you need lots of water, and obviously when you've finished, everything needs to be cleaned down, so your lid needs to come off. If you can lift your plates out, that's a really good thing to do. You should really lift them out every day. You've got like handles that can clip in and lift them out. Give that a good swill out. I just think that the rumbler is most important. Everything needs to be stripped down, because you've got the starch on it that just set, and as Stel says, it can be, potato rooms can have a funny smell, a sort of musty smell, and that's a good indication that there's something not quite right. And also remember to just flush your drains after you've completely finished.
Well, one of the things I always did, even with like an interceptor system, is always have covers on all the drains. Again, it's another line of defence. It's not going to hurt, and I think that just stops extra things. If EHO comes around and sees anything, they're going to say, well, actually, they're doing things right. Another thing I'd say is after washing down the machines, it's drying them, because it's that hanging about, that water, it's hanging about, and that's what starts to go off. One of the things I used to do with the peeler is I'd use a food-safe sanitizer or antibacterial spray and just go around the inner and leave it, because, again, the starch, the sugar, the water, the cold environment, it's going to cause bacteria or fungus growth. And that's not nice. It's just not. And I know everyone's going to say, oh, you're overthinking it. It's just a peeler. If you're using a dirty vessel to clean something, it just doesn't make sense.
I think your EHO officers now are more keener than they've ever been, because things like listeria, they're coming up more and more, and it's things we didn't really have the knowledge about 20 years ago. Yeah, we knew what it was, but we never really thought about it. And I think just because the nature of the food industry now, things are being looked at more closely. And I think, yes, we don't cook it yet. And yes, it's a co-production. Yes, we just chip it. We haven't fried it yet. We treat it. We wash all the starch off. That still doesn't mean to say that all the equipment should be absolutely spotless.
And another thing, which a lot of people just don't think about, is clean drains. If you've got clean drains, it is really important for good pest control. Because if you've got a greasy, starchy, potatoey drain, well, the rats are thinking, I've got somewhere to go here. There's lots of food, and if I keep going, I'm going to find more food. So they just keep going because it's a natural supply. So one thing we always tell our customers to do is use our natural degreaser. And it's not a plug. Use anything you want if it's powerful enough. Just constantly flush once a week. Have a nice flush with really hot water, lots of cold water if you've got it, but ideally hot if you've got a boiler that can keep producing hot water. Be surprised what a difference it makes. And also, I know it sounds awful, but you're pushing the problem down someone else's drain. And then if someone, I know it sounds awful, but if someone's being investigated on your street and you've got clean drains, the other takeaways to your left and right have dirty drains, who do you think's getting into trouble? It's not going to be you. It's just not.
And if you do, just say, Stel, tell me to do this.
What, to clean the drains? Well,
push it down to somebody else's problem.
But again, but I'm not being funny. By the time it gets down to the water treatment centres, it's not a problem, because they're using algae and it's cleaning it, and the algae eats the fat and it eats the starch. However, I don't think the problem from the water treatment centres, that's not their problem. Their problem is physical plastics going down the drains and then blockages on its way to the water treatment centre. So what we're saying is do everything you can to stop physical things going down, but also realise that it is a drain and clean it once a week. Because
and I think the start of that is having an insector tank for your cake to come off, and that's a really good start. And I think Stel's got a big point there, really, because if you think about it, a lot of shops are in high streets and whatever, and these aren't new drains. These are quite a few years old, something like that, and probably, but it's probably smaller as well, so they can get clogged up quicker. We haven't got the sort of piping systems that new estates have got. A lot of people have shops that have been established for many, many years that might even be damaged. You don't know. And I think, just as Stel says, keeping it clean at your end can only be ticks on your box.
Also, an important thing is water falls. It's gravity, it falls down. If you've got grout missing out of a tile, it's going to go into that. So I know it's a potato room and you're going to say, oh, well, I don't care if it's wet all day. but the water is going to seep under those tiles. It's going to expose any gap between the tiles and the what you call it underneath the cement. Essentially, I forgot what they call it now. What tilers use, yeah. So you're going to get a mouldy smell. It's going to come apart. It's going to be disgusting. And if you can smell it, you've got a problem. That's a fact. So if you can smell mould at that level, then you really need a real heavy duty disinfectant. And if you're closed 1 day a week, I'd literally just cover that floor and just let it seep into every single crack over the weekend. Because if it smells, that's a sign. And if you've got loose tiles, fix them.
Again, that comes back to servicing. If you're serving your equipment, have a look at the room, and does that need servicing? Not just your equipment, your actual room you're doing it. And starch is awful stuff. It seems to rot everything, doesn't it? So you've got to be careful about that. So starch is a big thing, and the only way you can get rid of that is by water. And I think you'll give the science on that, Stel, but it doesn't actually dissolve it. It just suspends it, doesn't it?
No, exactly. Well, starch is a non-Newtonian fluid, and then when you add water to the mix, you're just going to have a problem. And again, it just goes back to very simple cleaning practices. And again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Just, it's going to save you money in the long run. If that floor is dry, it means you're not going to need to retile it or a really expensive resin flooring. You will at some point, but why do it a year earlier?
Absolutely.
So, David, we've done this one, and look forward to talking to you on the next one, mate.
Thanks, my friend, and I hope everybody out there has enjoyed it. Again, this is just our thoughts. We're not saying you've got to do this. It's just chatting about what we know, and if somebody can take something from it, absolutely brilliant. And if there's something you don't agree with, by all means, let Stel know, and not me, because
only me,
only you. No, because we might have not thought of something, or you might come up with something. Then, well, I've done it this way, and as I keep saying, knowledge is power, and the only way you get it is by, a lot of these things that have come up today have sometimes happened by accident. Like the buckets of water thing and the reservoir water. This is just happening. I think it's just great that your dad did it and my dad did it, and that's where I got it from. And it works. It's very simple, but it works. So, but yeah, thanks again, Stel. I've really enjoyed it today, and I hope everybody else has.